Hello, everybody. I'm Ron Waxman. This is another edition of the Journal Club for the CRM Journal, the Cardiovascular Revascularization Medicine. I have with me Dr. Spencer King, the associate editor, the editor at large, and Dr. Gary Mitz, the senior editor. And we picked today a paper which is called First-in-Man Evaluation of Sirolimus-Eluting Stent with Abluminal Fluorometric Triflusal coating with Ultrathin Struts by OCT at 9 months follow-up. In short, it was called the PROMETHEUS Study. And the key author of this one is Dr. Jose de la Torre Hernandez from Barcelona, I believe.
Santander.
Spain. And also we're going to welcome here Aline Plumen from the Netherlands. She wrote a commentary, a very nice commentary on the paper. So I introduce everybody. I'll let you, Jose, to present the paper, what it's all about.
Okay, this study is first-in-man evaluation of a novel design for a drug-eluting stent in humans. And this first-in-man was a study in small cohort patients, just only more than 60 patients, and undergoing the implantation and afterwards angiographic and OCT examination at 9 months follow-up. What is the novelty of the stent? Because there are many drug-eluting stents coming to the market, I say every year from many companies around the world. I think that first of all, it's a Spanish company, and this Spanish company has been producing the stents for many years, from the late 90s. I remember I was a fellow at the time when they came to my hospital with a red metal stent, and we said at that time, it's impossible to do a stent in Spain. This is American technology. And this guy from Barcelona said, no, I can do it because it's a laser cutter, no. And they manufactured stents, and these stents were good, really good. And then we helped this company to develop other stents in the future. They had been working with drug-eluting stents for many years. And they came with this design, with this combining the features that have been more successful in the drug-eluting stent technology, which is a very thin chromium strap, 68 microns, with cross-section in an oval shape, streamlined to be more flow compatible and to create less disturbances in the flow. It's an open cell design. Second is the drug that is eluted, which is a drug that is a Limus drug, which is the Limus family is the best drug of sure to be used. The polymer is a fluoropolymer. The fluoropolymer that was firstly designed for use for the drug science for the Sirolimus-Eluting stent. And this polymer has demonstrated the very, very low thrombogenicity. It's very thromboresistant, highly biocompatible, and that's the reason why science stents have been related with the lower, one of the lowest thrombosis rates. And a new thing, a real novelty thing, is to covalently link the polymer with the Triflusal. Triflusal is a drug that is on the family of salicylates. It's from a Spanish laboratory in Barcelona, and this Triflusal has a capacity of blocking the antiplatelet aggregation. Then these are the components. Some of them are very well known, like the strap called chromium thickness, the polymer with the fluoropolymer, the Limus drug, and finally this Triflusal. And with this combination, this stent was used in this study. We included patients with just indication for PCI, excluding patients with complex lesions like CTOs, LEDMAs, SVGs, or bifurcations, restenosis. There were de novo lesions in patients with any kind of clinical indication except for a STEMI. Patients with a STEMI were excluded because all the considerations of the thrombus burden and all this. Finally, we calculated for the endpoint, the primary endpoint was the percentage of destruction of in the stent volume by the neointium at 9 months after implantation. And we can see here the secondary endpoints, with this strut coverage of at 9 months, malposition, and other parameters. And finally, the calculation of the sampling based on this primary endpoint was for at least 55 stents per 60 patients. We included 65 patients. We were over the target. And in the follow-up, we lost patients because we were in the middle of the outbreak of the COVID-19, and 6 patients declined in basic follow-up. That was exactly in the time of lockdown. Then finally, we could get 58 patients at follow-up, 63 target lesions, which is fortunately over the target for in the sampling and statistical calculation. And in these patients, the angiographic follow-up, as is shown here, was really very good because we have the late lumen loss was 0.11, as you can see there. And binary restenosis was just 1.6%, only one case that showed this value. For the OCT follow-up, we did angiographic, the typical graphic for angiographic late lumen loss with only 6% of patients over 0.5 late lumen loss. In the OCT, we see the new intimal pattern with the predominantly homogeneous, no thrombi, very interesting, nothing of thrombi at all. Regarding the mean intimal volume obstruction, that was the primary endpoint, was 10.5% with standard deviation of 6.9. And regarding the strut level analysis, uncovered struts just 2.5, malapose 1.1%, and the new intimal thickness 110. Then these are the results. Of course, we need to put this in context. And we, in the paper discussed, we compared the findings this is a nice figure, a composition of an angiography and OCT. This is the baseline lesion in circumflex, the immediately post-PCI, and finally the 9 months follow-up showing a very thin but complete intimal coverage of the stent without the vaginations, the malapposition, and a very thin layer of intima. As I was saying before, we compared these results with other registries and studies with 9 months follow-up, doing OCT and angiographic follow-up. And this late lumen loss of 0.11 was among the lowest in all other registries. And the OCT as well was in the lower range of intimal perforation for the volume obstruction. And it's very interesting that this is the only study I have seen, and maybe other one with the old Endeavor stent with no thrombi, no? That stent, the Sirolimus-Endeavor, was a stent with a more intimal proliferation, and it's not strange that no thrombi was seen. But among all the powerful drug-eluting stents with currently used, it's very uncommon to see no subclinical thrombi like in this study. Regarding clinical follow-up, of course, it's not a clinical study based on clinical events because it's a very small cohort. But there were only 2 cases of TLR. One of them was catch in the angiographic follow-up, and the other one was with a mild moderate restenosis at the time of angiographic follow-up, but developed restenosis afterwards, 11 months of follow-up. Then this is the study. Basically, we tested a new design or drug-eluting stent that was based on different features that have been successful in drug-eluting stent technology that we have for nearly 20 years with us. And the OCT and angiographic examination have been really promising, have been very positive. No? And then we need now the clinical data in registries or trials. No? This is the summary.
Thank you very much, Jose. So, Elaine, you want to give us the main points in your commentary to the paper?
Yes. So first, I'd like to congratulate Dr. De La Torre Hernandez with this first-in-man study. I think the follow-up, especially the angiographic and OCT follow-up, was quite impressive considering the circumstances. So the main points of our commentary were that it's a very interesting device as it combines features that are all potentially cause the stent to be of low thrombogenicity. So we were actually wondering why did you choose to have a 9-month DAPT for all patients? Is this standard clinical practice or?
This was the study was designed nearly 3 years ago. At that time, the short DAPT times were not well established, and although there are people that's more in favor of the short DAPT at that time, like me and other guys in the group said, we don't know very well how this drug-eluting stent is going to behave, what's going to be the performance. Let's be cautious and let's place at least 9 months because we don't know. Maybe when you are testing a new drug-eluting stent, the first is the safety for the patient. And then we decided to go with long DAPT. On the other hand, these were not patients with high bleeding risks because we excluded those kind of patients. But you are right that now these stents with this data and OCT, they could be really very tolerant with 6 or even 3 months of DAPT, definitely.
Yeah, I think that would be very interesting to see results of short DAPT with this device. Also considering the strut shape, as you also mentioned, it's more of an oval shape, and this may cause less flow disturbance and also causes less formation of microthrombi around those struts. Yeah.
Excellent. Any other comments, Aline?
I think the other main comment that we had about the device itself was that maybe the visibility of the device when during the procedure may be suboptimal, as it's made of cobalt chromium struts. And there are other materials that may give you a bit more advantage in terms of visibility, such as platinum chromium devices or platinum iridium core wire in a device. What were your experiences with the placement of the stents?
Yeah, this radiopacity, you are right, is similar to that you see with the Science or the Osiro or other stents, because we have many cobalt chromium stents now in the shelf in the market that have between 60 to 80 microns. No? It's to the platinum adds more visibility, like like Synergy, for example. But the visibility of this stent is similar to the others. Then you are more used to this because we are working with this technology, with these stents every day. But you are right that sometimes the new equipment in radiology also is better. Then we can see, or you have the same vision of the booths or the technology to place more when you have problems with very obese patients or something like that.
Thank you. So, Gary, you've been an imaging guy for so many years, and you've been assessed all the technologies. I was first an OCT. So first of all, what's your impression on the OCT outcome? And I'd like to ask you two questions. One, can we rely on OCT data to determine that the APT should be stopped? Because should have they done the OCT at a shorter period of time? And also, as a surrogate, is that good enough for us to equate the performance of this stent to other stents if you compare by OCT measurements or finding?
Yeah, so this is probably as good as I've seen with any other stent. So to answer your second question first, if you're willing to accept surrogates, which the US FDA obviously will not, but this is a pretty good surrogate. And in terms of using OCT to decide when to stop DAPT, the 9-month coverage is really quite excellent, but we don't know what an earlier coverage is. So if you really want to stop DAPT early and base it upon imaging, you need to have a 1-month study. And this has been done in some studies by randomizing follow-up. So everybody gets baseline OCT, and follow-up is randomized to 1 month, 6 months, and 1 year, or something similar, because the excellent 9-month coverage does not really tell you what's happening at 1 month. Now, but I'd like to go, to look at a slightly different direction. I mean, these ultra-thin struts are really nice in terms of limiting thrombogenicity and so on, but there's a trade-off. And the trade-off is necessarily the strength of the stent. And so I start to worry when we get to some point like these 68 micron stents in terms of stent deformation, stent dislodgement, particularly if they're used in proximal vessels, when we know that deformation is more common. So I think that there's also room for a stent that is more robust for treating ostial right and left main disease, where the size of the vessel is so large that the ultra-thin struts are really not so necessary.
That's a very pertinent comment, and we have seen with the new stents that are around 70 microns recoils in ostial in right coronary artery, and you dilate the balloon, you see full expanded, you retrieve the balloon, and you see like it's a shrinkage of the stent, and you do IVUS, and it's not a good result. And I think you're right. Maybe we should have stents with a thicker strut just for these locations, 3.54 millimeters diameter stents with this thickness, or at least new alloys that maybe in the future, because the engineers say that less than 60 microns is going to be very difficult to retain, to get the radial force with this cobalt chromium. Maybe we need other kind of metallic alloys, or I don't know, carbon based, something like that. I don't know, but it's true that there is a trade-off.
Spencer, any comments? I mean, do we need more stents? I mean, we have a lot of stents that became a commodity. Uh, what is that you're looking for a new stent to enter into the clinical arena?
Well, I think, first of all, congratulations, Dr. Delatorre. That this hits on a lot of things. This is kind of like throwing the kitchen sink at stent technology. So you hit a lot of things at the same time. I very much like the idea of thin struts. I like the idea of a design that reduces shear force aberrations, and all these things are good for the antithrombotic nature. You've got a coating that's some kind of polymer fluorocarbon fluoropolymer coating. Plus, you've got some drug in there that's anti-aggregate drug, plus an anti-restenotic drug. So it's a lot of things. It raises the question to me about manufacturing and complexity of the stent. It looks like a very excellent stent, especially for the kind of lesions that were treated. Gary raises an important point, that is, if you needed more radial force, would this kind of stent be appropriate for that? But again, with intravascular imaging and all, you probably know whether you need a lot of extra radial force. You know, if you've got a big artery, if you've got a calcified nodule or something that's going to leave you with a funny shaped artery. The endpoints, I think, are interesting. I don't know how much the endpoint of late loss, is really interesting anymore. Obviously, if you in this group, you seem to get complete expansion. I mean, as I read the numbers, but if you have any kind of lesions that are more resistant and you get less acute gain, then your late loss always looks better because you get some initial recoil, which is not counted in your endpoint. But that didn't seem to happen here in the kind of lesions you treated. I also, your main objective here appears to be, how do you have something that's really not going to have any in-stent restenosis, which is an important thing, although that's become very rare. But to really take advantage of it, you want to cut out your antithrombotic therapy, which we know is bad. We want not to bleed. So I think this idea of being sure that the 1 month of DAP would be fine with this stent is an exciting thing. If I was going to decide if I'm going to use this kind of stent, I would want to know what's the advantage. I love every component of of this design, but to solve the clinical conundrum, it's got to be something that can get around systemic use of antithrombotic medications, so that we don't have to have our worst problem with stenting, which is bleeding. But I think it looks like a great stent. Continue to advance. I wrote a little editorial for Ron called "Has stents gone as far as they can go?" And maybe we have to add this one on to. Okay, you always can go a little bit further.
You know, if the manufacturer is planning to commercialize the stent in Europe or outside of Europe, or this was like one attempt that tried 3 years ago, and then the company, like other companies, had no resources to move forward to commercialize the product?
Yeah, they are indeed. They are commercializing. They started. We did a registry with several hundreds, and they are now commercializing in Europe and in South America. Particularly, they have a huge business for all these cath lab devices in South America and in Spain, of course, and some countries in Europe. They are commercializing. Yeah.
Now, where is the PROMETHEUS came from? This is not a Spanish name as far as I
know.
know.
It's from the mythology. Prometheus was the first man, that was created by God with the best compliments, and there was always us, which is not an excellent outcome, but this as PROMETHEUS, no, the first. The idea was this, no, we take the best and we did a stent that suppose is going to be excellent because we have good components. Sometimes it is true, sometimes not. And Prometheus in the Greek mythology is an equivalent.
Of course, he was tied up to that stone, and the eagle or whatever ate his liver. So I hope that doesn't happen to your stent. I think the idea of a stent with all these components, how do you differentiate it from other stents? And I'm not a business consultant, and I have no interest in that, but it seems to me that the way to market a stent with all these features would be to charge more for it, so that everyone will want to do it. But that's a bit of a joke. But really, I mentioned the complexity, seeming complexity of the manufacture, and will there be any limitation with the manufacturing relative to the cost of manufacturing or the complexity of it? Is that any kind of problem that you foresee?
It's complex, and but the good thing is that this company is a typical family company that when the new generation take over the company, they were trained in MIT, for example. The main boss in engineering is a close friend of mine. He spent many years in MIT in Cambridge in the US, and the brother also was working in California. These people as a new generation, they took the energy of the father, which is a typical Spanish entrepreneur. But these guys say, no, we cannot be just followers doing the same that other companies are doing, the same stance, whatever. Let's do something new. And they are doing, but you are right, it's complex. The manufacturer, I have been in the facilities. Wow, there are a lot of chemical engineers. There is a lot of work before the manufacturing. They are investing money. They're making the money for another field, for another business, and they see this part maybe is not so profitable for them, but this gives the company some prestigious, some really predominance. But they are doing with commodities. They are doing the business with other companies for the hospitals. But this stent is like the pill, the brilliant thing they demonstrate they can do, But it's true that it's more complex than other stents.
Yeah, what I see here is that as Spencer, as you mentioned, we added all the knowledge every stent that we came, but then it comes to the point to it, what level of development you're going to achieve any more gain, and how do you prove it? And we have not been successful to do head-to-head studies and showing. I mean, maybe the exception was Osiro, but again, maybe not definitive outcome to say that this is much better than the best in class. So it's probably going to be among the best in class. How do you find a better stent without doing a head-to-head study? I don't know. I mean, clinically, because that's what counts at the end of the day. The mentor of Eileen, Clemens from Bergelen, he probably was doing the master of so many head-to-head studies over the years, and that's why I asked his group to review the paper, because it was very hard to find differences, and it changed from 1 year to a second year and to a third year. So I'm not sure that, I think we reached almost to the plateau in terms of the advancement of DES technology. Will really need a full breakthrough, which we hope it was the biodegradable scaffold, but that didn't happen. So it's probably going to be just among the other good stents, but it will have to show it on a larger cohort of patients, obviously, and to be at least equated by performance goal or at the head-to-head study with one of the best stents in the market.
Ron, you know a lot about FDA and how they do. Is the use of two different type of drugs in the stent, one antithrombotic formula and one anti-prolific? Does this cause a problem for approval in the U.S.?
I believe they add more complexity to the review process. There are two sections within the FDA. There is the device and there is the drug. This is a combination device, and it will have to be reviewed and cleared by both CDRH and CDER. And when you add two drugs, you always ask the question about interaction between the drugs. Is one drug affect the other one? Toxicity. So it's not make it easier for sure. And FDA would not accept just, I'll give you 2,000 patients with great data. They want to know what happens between the two drugs. So the pharmacokinetics, the elution, the distribution over the polymer. This is a durable polymer, so at least they don't have to show kinetics of degradation of the polymer. And the polymer is known. So I think one drug is very known. The other drug is not that known. So it's going to take a little bit more data to provide. And you know what? We found out that not every company wants to do that right in the US because of the cost and because the price of stenting is falling year by year. So at the end of the day, it's not a business decision to come to the US with this technology. So I don't know if we'll ever see that stent in the US, but you know, it's pleasant to hear that the company will continue in Europe. And if they will be committed to gather more data, we may be able to evaluate long-term outcome of this stent, because we know that most of those DES stent, they still have some creeping events related to the stent over years. And the question if this technology would mitigate it to show some advantages, not at 1 year, but maybe 3 years or 4 years, it remains to be seen.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Gary.
Just to echo what Ron said, I'm skeptical that this would even enter into clinical trials in the US, because I think the hurdle for the pharmacokinetics of the two drugs is going to be almost insurmountable, given the questions that the FDA is likely to ask.
Well, our time is up, guys. So I'd like to thank to everyone. I'd like again to congratulate Dr. De La Torre Hernandez and his group and the company for bringing another probably good device into the market. We are happy that we were able to give you a platform in our journal to present your 9-month OCT data. And I'd like to thank to Eileen and Professor von Bergelen for helping to review and write the commentary, and to you, Gary and Spencer, for joining me for another edition of the CRM Journal Club for the month of November. We are a little bit late this month, so stay tuned. We'll be soon with the month of December. So thanks, everybody, and have a happy holidays.
Yeah. One last comment I want to say is it's a honor to be facing this luxury panel. Eileen, these are 3 of the most important persons in interventional cardiology, and you know best. And I hope to submit to CRM the last registry of the stent that we are running now. And let's see if we are lucky to be published with the clinical study.
Gracias.
Gracias. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.